Well, boils and ghouls, it's your old pal, John Kassir, the voice of the Crypt Keeper. And I want to welcome my good fiends of the Horror Heals podcast. Is horror good for mental wellness? But of course it is. I delight in the delicious deaths of pitiful people on the silver screen. So get ready for a hell of a good time with my new fiends, Corey and Kendall, on the Horror Heals podcast.
Before we welcome her onto the show, we want to acknowledge how much we love Dee Wallace. Many of you know her as the mom from E.T., but she's gone on to do many things. She was a Daytime Emmy Award nominee for her role on General Hospital. And stay tuned, spoiler alert, I'm a huge soap opera fan. That has some allure for me. And of course, she also was a Saturn Award nominee back in 1983 for the film E.T.
Dee, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
When Kendall and I decided that we were going to do a sister podcast, A Family Twist, he had been twisting my arm for months. Like, we've got to do a horror podcast. We've got to do a horror podcast. And my pushback was, Kendall, do you know how many horror podcasts there are right now? How are we going to break through? What's our angle? This happened very recently, and I'm sure you're going to be able to relate to. I was at Monster Mania, a convention that you're very familiar with.
Oh, yeah.
I was in line to meet director Sam Raimi, and you know how they have you in the tight spaces. I noticed this young man, 2 rows over, who was very clearly in some sort of duress. He was pacing as well as he could in that tight space, speaking to himself in soft tones, and looked like he was about to sweat and was shaking a little bit. And I was just about to ask the people on either side of him, hey, do you mind if he steps out of line for a few minutes so he can just feel a little bit more comfortable and then come back in when it's his time to meet Sam Raimi. But before I could do that, he was holding a stack of DVDs, and the person next to him said, hey, oh man, I love that movie. Which one are you going to get signed? The anxiety, the trauma, whatever he was going through melted away instantly. Huge smile on his face. He just met a new friend, and they started to have a conversation about their mutual love of Sam Raimi movies. And it was just like, this is the podcast. Horror Heals. The healing power of horror. And
yeah,
I just thought, okay, this is it. This is what we're going to do. And I'm sure you can relate to that completely.
Totally. I was invited to do a big press thing for the Hollywood Museum.
Mm-hmm.
There were several horror actors that were there to celebrate the night, and we were all asked to speak for about 5 minutes. I chose to speak on the positive effects of watching horror films. And everybody went, what? It's just a take that nobody had thought of or really knew anything about. Little kids understand it. When I used to show my daughter The Little Mermaid, and she would go, Mommy, lady get big part, lady get big part, where Ursula comes out of the water, and it's very frightening.
Yeah.
Little kids at Disney know the truth in this. Every Disney movie has a bad queen witch or something going on, right?
Yes.
Because the little children can sit in the safety of their home where mommy or daddy or both are there, and they can practice handling their fear. It also shoots us with a lot of adrenaline and neurotransmitters, dopamine and serotonin, all the feel-good things that we know that when they shoot through us, we get a high, we get elated. Horror movies do that. horror movies in a relationship can bring you a lot closer. Just think of watching The Exorcist with your lover when you were younger.
Right.
I didn't like that.
Right.
We had a really good date after that, too. They affect our limbic system. They affect your brain and release beautiful things in your brain, and also expand your brain into the knowledge that no matter what it is, you can deal with it. Right? When you apply that to life, there's an enormous amount of life skills that you get. You can Google this, positive effects of horror films. It's incredibly interesting information to have, especially if you're a parent and all your kids are into all this.
Yeah, I know it's surprising for folks because there are a lot of people like, oh, I can't watch it. It's too scary. I can't sleep.
I do a lot of horror films. I'm very particular about the ones I watch. And I think part of the challenge is that these days, we don't really have true horror films a lot. We have slasher films.
Yeah.
Slasher films are just, hi, I'm this character. Watch how brutally they can murder me.
Right.
The stories fall away. You don't care that much about the characters. That would be interesting research to do what happens to the body and the brain between a good horror film like Cujo and slasher film where you set up 6 characters to brutally get murdered.
Right. There's certainly some lazy writing going on. I think that's fair to say. Because you can write a good slasher film and have it be just as effective. I would go back to A Nightmare on Elm Street, the very original one. Heather Langenkamp, a lot of people relate to Nancy. And I feel Nancy has saved lives. Not just the ones in the movies, but real lives as well.
Yeah, I've done a lot of Rob Zombie movies. Have a huge following from those movies. But Rob has a way of taking what could be a slasher film and making it into a true horror film. And there is a big difference in your emotional investment with these characters.
I completely agree. And
I have so many people come to my table and they say, Dee, I watched Cujo when I was little. We just saw it again last week. Oh my God, it's a whole different movie when you're a parent.
yeah,
When you're younger, you're going through the ride of the little boy. When you're older, you're going through the ride of the responsibility of saving a person you love.
absolutely.
Which was always about a mother's love and what she would go to for her child. I never looked at Cujo as a horror film, ever.
It's amazing. I think it harkens back to the films that we consider classics now that are just as watchable today as they were when they were released 30, 40 years ago. Films like Cujo and E.T., not that E.T.'s a horror film, and The Howling. Watch them today and just be like, oh, wow.
And Exorcist.
Oh, yeah.
That was the most frightening film for me. That and a little film called Don't Look Now. Have you ever seen that? You don't see anything. And it's just psychologically horrifying.
Absolutely. Yeah. Beautiful, too.
Yes, it is a beautiful film.
I love that you bring that up because I'm writing a horror screenplay right now, putting some of my homages in there. And there's definitely an homage to that film because it is so powerful.
Isn't that really what all horror films are about? Our fear of being taken over by something we can't control or someone. Even if you're a battered wife, you've lost control over a monster who has taken you over. And I think that's what all horror has in common. We get to practice holding our control of our own lives while we watch the horror.
Yes. Yeah. One of the things that I appreciate about you and the horror conventions in general is just the passion that you also have for the fans. You can feel that coming off of your table as you're meeting
Yeah.
up. And I'm sure you're familiar with a lot of the celebrities who feel the same way you do. You can just feel the energy coming off of their tables.
You can see the celebrities that go just to make the buck. And those of us who really, truly care about our fans. And I just love the exchange. Somebody was asking me the other day what I love about the conventions because they're so energy draining. And I said, wow, not my perception at all. I sit there all day and receive love.
Exactly.
Stories like the woman who came to my table and she had tears coming down her eyes. She said, Miss Wallace, you're part of a miracle in my life. My son is autistic. I never heard him speak a word. And I took him to see the re-release of E.T. And on the way home, he said every line that E.T. said. The first time she ever heard her son talk was because of a movie that touched his heart, that woke something up inside of him.
Yeah.
It's amazing how we touch people.
That's why we're doing this. I knew that there are going to be so many stories, and I want this to reach people who aren't just horror movie fans. There's so much more to the horror and the horror community that people don't realize. I started going to Comic-Cons as a teenager. They were fun. I had a good time. It wasn't until I started going to horror-specific cons that I got a completely different vibe.
Horror fans are the best fans in the world.
Yeah.
They're truthful. They're honest. I had a guy come up to my table. His whole face, his whole body was tatted, and he had piercings all over. I reacted, and he said, Miss Wallace, I don't know if you donate things, but I work with underprivileged children. I help take them to movies and restaurants and give them experiences that they wouldn't be able to have, and I sat there and I thought, thank you for being the gift in my life today. Thank you for being the lesson that it's what's in your heart, not how you look, that matters. It was a beautiful experience for me to watch my own judgment come up just like that before I even knew it was happening. So I'm a clairaudient channel, and what my channel says is when you're in reaction, you're out of creation.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There is a multitude of things going on in our world right now that want us to be in reaction. According to the information I know, all of the wars, the stories of famine, the hatred in our politics, it's all making us sicker. It's breaking down our immune systems because people are going focus on the fear and the anger and the distrust and the lack of unity. Focus there. And it breaks your immune system down. It puts you into constant reaction. Your adrenaline is going all the time, which is not good for your adrenals. You're in fight or flight all the time. Again, we have to become conscious to not choose that. Where can I see love? Where can I see unity? Where can I see people trying to work together? I'm going to choose to focus there. Do you know my community did a little test? In 1 hour of television, you can get up to 50 messages of a disease you're going to get, what pill you should take, and how that pill is going to probably kill you anyway. While you're watching happy families laughing with doggies running around. Your brain goes, oh, getting sick makes you happy. Years ago, you couldn't advertise any of that stuff on TV.
Yeah.
And then they got him to change it through our political system. And now we're one of the sickest, well-to-do countries in the world.
That's why I only stream commercial free.
And if you don't have that option, you can sit there and mute the commercials. And if something gets your attention, you go, thank you. I am the creation of me, and I am in perfect health and wellness, and it feels like love.
Absolutely.
Direct yourself toward the positive.
Yeah. So let's go back to when you were making some of these iconic films.
Okay.
Did you have an inkling of the positive power of horror movies back when you were making them?
No, that all came to the surface because of the progression of my healing work that I do. And somebody said to me, how can you do all these horror films and be a healer? And the first thing I heard was, because I get a lot of fun and joy out of doing them. They're only positive to me.
Yeah.
And for people who choose to go see them, now we know that they're getting a lot of positive things from the ride. Look, nobody judges you if you want to go on a roller coaster. It's fun. The ride of horror films for a lot of people are fun. And if you're having fun, your body's going to respond and your brain in a really fun way.
Absolutely. You mentioned both E.T. and Cujo. Are those the two roles that people come to you that say, this movie really helped me? Or is there another movie that stands out to you that...
Oh, people come to me for E.T., Cujo, The Howling, The Frighteners, Critters. Got a lot of Critters fans out there. People come to your table and want signatures for things you've done because they have memories.
Yeah.
Specific memories. A man came to the table and said, Dee, I lived in a really small southern town. And my mom and dad got divorced. And when that happened, I was an outcast. My friends wouldn't talk to me. I never got invited to the parties. Then E.T. came out, and all of a sudden, it was okay to accept me again. Because Elliot lived in a family that didn't have a dad either.
Yeah.
It's crazy how our work affects people. And I hear a lot of stories from The Howling, because The Howling is really about the battle between good and evil.
Yeah.
In the consciousness of a person. And a lot of people ask me about that. And again, Cujo is just a representation of how far can you go to protect the person you love.
Right. Yeah.
And that's a worldwide message.
Yes. Yeah.
That never gets old.
Can you do me a favor and just speak to the younger horror actors or performers, professionals who are just starting to enter the convention circuit? It's a great opportunity to meet the fans. It's a great opportunity to supplement your income in between films. But you do it what I would say is the right way. What advice would you give to the horror professionals who are just starting to enter the convention world?
I would say be conscious every morning before you go down to your table to ask, what can I give today? How much love? How can I make someone feel welcome? What can I share with them that will make a difference in their lives? Now, a lot of my fans know that I do this healing work, and they'll come to the table and go, Dee, do you have time to do a short reading for me? And I always take the time to do it if it's possible.
Yeah.
My career has given me a platform to talk about the principles of creation and manifestation. They work beautifully together, and I'm grateful for that.
I think it's important for them to know that there's the opportunity to change people's lives in a very positive way.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, I can't imagine how many lives have been saved by horror movies. Horror movies save people's lives.
And they bring people together
Yes.
in incredible ways.
Yeah, I mentioned this before, but I did not feel the camaraderie, the community Comic-Cons until I started regularly attending horror conventions. I love them. It's one of my favorite things to do is go to horror conventions.
It's a whole different vibe. It really is like bringing a clan together.
Right. Yes. It's like a family reunion.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So real quick, I do want to talk about one of your films that maybe not a lot of folks have seen, but it's one that Kendall and I now watch annually around Christmas time. Red Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
Oof, that's the heavy-hitting film. And talk about family drama and trauma. Can you just talk a little bit about that experience and what that movie means to you?
When I think of that movie, I think of sharing space with those wonderful Aussie actors. It was a unique experience. We all stayed in the same house. We'd switch off cooking dinner for everybody. I'd fix beef bourguignon one night over noodles. It was a lovely working experience with really positive people, and everybody would bring in their best ideas. We worked around what I thought was an excellent script, and were able to put in ideas that heightened it. I light up in smiles whenever I think about shooting that film.
Wonderful. I have to say, E.T. was such a life-changing film for so many people.
Yeah, still is.
Yes. Reflecting back as an adult, I'm like, oh, this is when I started to discover my sexuality, because I think one of my first crushes was Elliot. As so many young boys probably,
I will share that with him.
What was it like getting together for the reunion on the Drew Barrymore show?
Oh, it was awesome. The boys and I are on the circuit together quite a bit. But to get all of us together, talk about being together back then, every time I do a show and we start talking about E.T., I learn things that I didn't know because the kids had so many scenes together
Right.
that I wasn't a part of. Especially Robert McNaughton. My God, he remembers everything. He'll tell this story and I'll go, wait, that happened on the set. Being able to share all that and share our love with Drew together again and reminisce about a movie that, let's face it, it's our Wizard of Oz.
It is.
It has affected so many lives in a positive way.
Yeah.
I am blessed to be a part of it.
I'm going to let you go in just a moment, but I know that you embrace the term Scream Queen. I feel like we've got to come up with a better title for you. If it's Queen of the Scream Queens or something, but we got to come up with something.
I'm just fine with a continuing successful female actor into oblivion. I'm real happy with that one. I just want to keep working and creating, and until I decide I don't want to be here anymore. As I'm going out, I'm going to be saying, oh, I've got an idea.
Wonderful. Yeah. Well, as Kendall and I decided to do this podcast, the name that immediately came to mind as to who should be the first guest was Dee Wallace. Because I know both sides of your coin, the healing and the horror. There's no one better, and you did not disappoint. Thank you so much for being the very first guest on Horror Heals.
Thank you. What a blessing. Thank you. And tell Kendall I send my love and we missed him.
I will, yes. And I will make sure the next con that you're at, I'm dragging him. He doesn't like big crowds, but he needs to meet you in person.
I will look forward to
Wonderful. I love both sides of Dee's career because many of us obviously know her as a actor who has performed in a bunch of horror movies, which we talked about during the episode. But on the flip side, Dee is also a healer who has written several books on the subject. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to have her on the show in the first place, because she kind of bridges that gap between horror and healing. Dee has been one of our favorites for years, and we're so grateful that she agreed to come on and be the very first guest on Horror Heals. Thank you, Dee, and we're looking forward to seeing you at a HorrorCon very soon.